Primary skills and maybe some of the glitches people ran into and things to think about in GIS. This first chapter is huge. I mean, there's just so many things, and if you don't have any prior knowledge, the scaffolding, like where to put information, it's just all in a pile in your brain in one big clump. And pretty soon you're start building shelves that you can put information and make good connections. But right now, it's just on the floor. So I went over the exercises that are due on Tuesday, and I went through those, and I thought, okay, so these are really the basic skills that she's trying to have you get a hold of this chapter. And one is to be able to identify the differences between a feature class, a feature data set, a geodatabase. So she has you look at all those different types of data files. And then I want to talk a little bit in a minute about the difference between a shape file and a feature class. Okay, she doesn't really go over that, and you'll run into both kinds. And shape files are becoming less common. They used to be really, really common, and feature classes were less common. So it's beginning to switch a little bit. She has you identify different coordinate systems, and then you do a process called projecting on the fly, where you change things to a specific coordinate system so that your data will line up. She has you evaluate metadata or an item description. And then you're sorting tables, you're looking at the units that the data's in. Like if they give you square area, you need to know, is it feet or meters? And she tells you how to get through that. And then you use the find option, hopefully, on a table. And these are the things you're going to do in the exercises, but I think she's gone through all of these a little bit in the tutorial. And then use field statistics and record the properties of a raster. So that's kind of the things that you really want to make sure you understand why you're doing what you're doing. So I can click a lot of buttons, but if I don't realize, oh, I'm doing that so that I can sort the data and find the biggest lake. You know, and then I need to find the area. Oh, but I need to know whether it's square meters or square feet. So I just want you to really think about what the focus is on that chapter. What's really important for you guys, especially here, because you're going to be moving back and forth, is this idea of file management. So I want to talk about setting up your folders, this idea of absolute and I don't think they call it relative pathway. They call it something else. Anyway, relative pathways is what I call it. And then saving your map document or your MXD. So when I started this on my desktop, I made a folder called GIS245. And in that folder, I grabbed the price data, which is zipped, and I unzipped it in that folder. And I grabbed the clips, and I put those in my folder. And I have made a folder for the first week's work, so Songer PO1, so price 1. Now, in order to move back and forth between the class and home on your flash drive, putting those clips on is going to be crazy, right? So you may want to leave your clips on your laptop at home and not bring those with you if you're copying back and forth. But I have a terabyte drive, so I just work from here. Everything's on here. But they can die on you. So you may want to back this up every now and then somewhere. So I just keep everything on here and I work from here. I don't put it on the desktop usually at Lane. I just have it on there. Then next week, I'm going to put a new folder called Songer PO2. And if I put the 0 there, it tends to then order numerically. If I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 10 is going to come after 1. And so I always put the 0 there. In GIS, you do not want any spaces in your file names or your folder names. Okay, so you can see I did clips underscore edition 6 or E6. I use camel case, which means the first word has an uppercase, and then the second word would be capital as well. So that way I don't have to use my my underscores, because often you're limited in how many characters you can have in a name. So just something to think about. When I open Arcmap, so in that first lab, she has you start Arcmap, and I added a bunch of data. So I threw that, you can see that the folder, if I look at the path name, so I've got the tuna can clicked here, and so this shows you that this drive, or where the data is user, student, desktop, GIS245, MGIS data. So it's telling me that the volcano data, the school data, and the county data is all coming from this specific location. So this is great if I'm working on if I've plugged my flash drive in here and I'm working here. But when I take my flash drive home, this is not going to be the same path name. It's not going to be C user student desktop. It's probably just going to be, you know, C, because I would have that at home. So one of the things you want to do when you start a map document is to click the file of your MXD and make sure that you click Store Relative Path Names. And what that's telling it, the computer, is I don't care what you call the desktop, as long as my data are in the same folders. When I made my MXD, you're going to be able to find it. Okay? And then this is also a nice place. You can add the title of the document. You can add a description and put your name. So it's a nice way to record your stuff. Yeah. I would do that. I would do that every time you start a new map document. I would just go File, and if you don't do any of this other stuff, because sometimes I change the name, you know, and you can do that later, but I would always store relative path names, okay? There's a few instances where you don't, but we'll get into that a lot later, okay? So if you're moving your files back and forth from a home computer to the school computer, make sure you set that, and your life will be so much better. There's ways to fix it if you don't, but it's just easier to start out correct. So then when I saved my document, I did File, Save As, and I made sure that my first map, Tutorial 01, and she tells you don't have to save it, but I like saving it just so that I have a copy if I need to go back. So I make sure I put it in that P01 folder. So I saved as Songer Tutorial 01, and it's in the GIS245 folder in Songer P01 folder. And let's say she has you do a second part of Tutorial 1. Then I can just save that as an _1, and then the next one is an _2. So what Josh just asked, what?
It's worth saving in case ArcGIS crashes while you're in the middle of it.
It is worth saving in case, yeah. So even though she says you don't have to save this, I often do. And then if I'm being really rigorous, I'll keep a lab note, as a lab book, as I'm going through, and note that I saved this step as, TO1_1. And then when I, did another one, I saved it as something different. So I can always go back to my next step. Okay? So, I'm going to close that. And then let's go ahead and take a look at, oh, I wish I'd made the window bigger, but I didn't. So let's just go ahead and open this for a minute. Okay. Oh, maybe I could, wow, I didn't know I could move that. That's pretty cool. Maybe I can't. Okay, so I have started kind of a blank map in ArcGIS, and if we look at my folders,
I think you can still expand the red borders.
okay, I'm just going to leave it because then it makes it big enough in the video clip. So you can see I have my folder set up. There's nothing in it. And I'm going to go ahead and go File, Save As, and I'm going to navigate, make sure it goes inside that folder. So that's telling me save it in here, and I'll just call it T01, and there, I'm good with that. And then I'm going to go File, Map Document Properties, and that's where I'm going to store the relative pathways. Okay, so I've got that right there. Okay. And then one of the things that happens, let's say I want to add some data. So a couple ways again, I can go into my catalog, and now I can see that my map document is bolded. So that means that's the active map document. There's no data connected with this yet, and so I'm going to go ahead and connect to the desktop. And then I'm going to go in and open our catalog. Oh, I did open it. There we go. Folder connections. There we go. And I'm going to go into MGIS data. And I'm going to go ahead and add some Oregon data here. So I've got the Oregon data in there. And that's where it's giving me my pathway. But because I've set that as a relative pathway, when I get home, the computer's going to look for a folder called GIS245, this, and this. It's not going to go any deeper than that original folder. So as long as I don't move anything out of that folder, I'm in good shape. Okay. Let me think. What was the other thing? That's just the setup piece. Okay. All right.